Welcome everyone. Glad you could join us here today. I'm Dewey Kathleen Hoffman, your guest host for today's presentation. We are at the Morris Thompson Cultural and Visitor Center. Today's presentation is produced by Danakanaga, which is a nonprofit that serves the voice for Alaska Native elders throughout the interior. Danakanaga collaborates with the Morris Thompson Center and Tana Chiefs Conference to bring you the Our People Speak series with generous support from Doyon Limited. The series features elders and culture bearers discussing seasonal Alaska Native cultural topics. Today we have esteemed guest, Kathleen Hildebrand, with us to share about foods that sustain Alaska Natives through the winter when reserves of meat and berries go down. And I'm here, as I said, hosting today. So we also have all of you in our audience. Welcome, glad you could join us. Just a few quick announcements. This episode is being recorded and will be released next week on February 10th at noon on Morris Thompson Center website, Facebook, and YouTube. You can revisit this program again anytime you like on those platforms, see our past programs or other series that have been produced. Also at the end of the program, just outside the theater door here, there's an email sign-up list if you'd like to be notified of our upcoming programs. There's also some comment cards, and we really appreciate having your feedback if you have the chance. Okay, that's all the announcements. So we'll jump right in. Welcome, Kathleen. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you. That was a very good introduction. And thank you, Danakanaga and Doyon, for funding this. It's always good to be here. I'm Kathleen Hildebrand. My married name is Meckel, but I'm divorced now. But I grew up in the village of Nulato. I'm the eldest of 7 people. I'm the granddaughter of the late Eddie and Alice Hildebrand and Rita and Tony Patsy. And I'm the daughter of the late Barney and Edith Hildebrand. And I am the first of 7, the first granddaughter on both sides. So it's kind of a special role that I ended up having. And I grew up in the time when I was born, my mom and my dad went to live with my grandma and my grandpa on my dad's side. And until I was a teenager, I was very fortunate to have both of my great-grandparents, my great-grandmas. And my grandma lived to be 100 and she passed away. My grandpa lived to be 99 when he passed away, on like both sides of the family. So in that way, I was very blessed to have a lot of cultural knowledge included in my upbringing. And so it's like my grounding force in who I am as an indigenous Alaskan person to the Yukon River.
I see. So one of our topics today is sourdough. I see you brought some materials with us today. Are there any memories or stories you'd like to share about sourdough being made growing up?
Yeah, well, it's kind of cool because in every home, in everybody's home, there was a sourdough jar. Every single person had a sourdough jar. And of course, as a child, you didn't know where it came from, but like in my house, we would get up, we would have breakfast, and my mom would fix us breakfast. There was, like I said, 7 of us. Then when we were done eating, then we would run up to my grandma and my grandpa on my dad's side and have breakfast with them, and it was always sourdough pancakes. And Grandma Rita, my mom's mom, was a late sleeper, so when we were done eating breakfast there, we would run to the other grandma's house.
All right.
I know. It was so funny because every place, they made it different. You know, like we didn't use utensils. We would just like take the sourdough, they would make it big and round, roll it up, and then dip it in the syrup and eat it in that way. In our house, we did that. Then at Grandpa Eddie's house, they always had all kinds of different berry jams. And my favorite was high bush cranberry jam. So I always put high bush cranberry jam on mine there and roll it up. And then at Grandma, she used to make her own, she used to make with Lipton tea and sugar. She kind of made her own syrup. So it was different. And then we would dip it in that there and then kind of drink the tea too. So those were my memories. And then, of course, you know, there was the great-grandmas. We run down to great-grandmas because by afternoon, she had bacon or she had sausage. Like we made bacon out of beaver tails, so she would have beaver tail bacon. So we'd go down to great grandma's house and roll the bacon in the sourdough pancakes and eat it like that for lunch by then. So I have lots of good memories, and even the smell, right away how you smell certain things, it brings you back to childhood.
Yeah.
And sitting in your grandma's kitchen, whichever grandma, wherever you're at, it's like a place of security, a place of love. So
Yeah.
those are my memories.
I can imagine the smells and
Uh-huh.
mouth-watering foods being made. And you can make a whole stack too and just eat it later on, right?
Yes.
Bring it with you,
Oh,
berry picking
yeah.
or wherever.
Oh yeah, and it was, yeah, it was kind of like the place of bread. If they didn't make bread, it was the bread source, and and everybody had those big cast iron pans that they made there. They had in some of the old, like my great grandma's, their old houses, they made their own wood stoves out of 55-gallon barrels where they just cut them in half and smushed them together, and there was like a little door. And the fry pan would be on top of that, the cast iron pan, and they would cook it on there, and you could hear the sizzle, smell the wood smoke, and ooh, the taste of sourdough. Oh my God! Now don't you want to eat sourdough
Mouth is
pancakes
watering.
now? Yeah.
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 So cool. And I even hear there's like some health benefits maybe to like the baking soda or something. I don't. Do you know anything about that?
About health benefits? Well, I know because it's one of the like it's a age. It's basically it's a fermented thing. A long time ago, my grandmas, when they first made it, they used potato water. They boiled the potatoes because they didn't used to have yeast in the village. You never got everything. When I was growing up, things used to come on the barge as a little girl, and the barge came 3 times a year on the Yukon River. And when you think about the Yukon River looking, can I move around?
Of course, yeah.
Oh,
That's what
okay.
it's for
So when you
demonstration
think
or-
about Alaska, when like here's the Yukon River, and then it wasn't until later on, like at Nenana, the railroad came in later on. So stuff would go on the railroad to Nenana, and then go down the Yukon River by barge, and the barge would come 3 times a year, and all of the groceries for the trading posts would be on that barge, and it would be 3 times a year. So when it got to the village, there would be like 1 log cabin for the store, and then 1 log cabin for the storage for all of this stuff. And when you ran out of stuff in the grocery store, you ran out. You didn't have anything. And I guess not everybody got yeast. I mean, they didn't know to stockpile it up. So they would make potato water and start it that way.
And
one
it
of the
might not
ways.
keep forever, right?
Right.
Yeast can go bad.
Yeah. And then some of the sourdoughs were like, some people had them for years.
Since the original sourdoughs?
Since the original, from when the people came in from, sorry, I gotta move around. When like we had the Russian people coming in all through here, they came in this area, and then we had the Hudson Bay traders coming in this area. And for where I grew up, the first contact we had was with Russian traders. So the sourdough for our town came from the Russian traders, because they had a fort in Nulato. And so my grandpa had his sourdough. He remembers when he was 12 years old, his grandma gave him a crock of the sourdough. So from when he was 12 years old, he had this sourdough. And here I am, I'm in my 60s, and I have my grandpa's sourdough, and it's still okay. And I didn't get it from Grandpa. Actually, he gave it to my brother Daryl, who's much younger than I am, because Daryl was like the Grandpa's right hand, and Daryl knew he was like, everything Grandpa did, my brother Daryl mirrored or mimicked everything he did. And making sourdough pancakes, Daryl actually, I learned how to cook early, and he would eat everything I cooked, but man, when he started making sourdough pancakes like Grandpa, it was so good, because he mimicked everything Grandpa did. And he became like that expert. So even to this day, today when, there's brunch at the brother's house, he'll have sourdough pancakes the way Grandpa made it. And then when I started having my kids and everything, Daryl would share the sourdough with me, then I would kill it.
Oh,
I would forget to feed it. Just add a tablespoon of water and a tablespoon of flour, and don't kill it. Just stir it up and leave it alone. And I would forget. I'd find it, and it's like, oh my God, what did I do? And I'd throw it away, and he'd say, you killed it, didn't you?
Oh, shucks.
It's like, yes. So when I was older, he gave it to me, and I'm taking better care of it. I have 2 sourdough jars of it going, so in case I kill one, I'll have a backup.
There you go.
I know. And then I have my rotation. Now that I have my grandchildren, I'll make sourdough bread for them, and the grandkids, they love sourdough French toast. I mean, I did the pancakes, but like I said, I'm not as good as my brother doing the pancakes, so I don't do it as often because Daryl makes great pancakes. They're just like Grandpa's. And I don't know if you could get that just like Grandpa's. Even my mom doesn't make it like Grandpa.
So he's the go-to, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I certainly like the sourdough bread. And do you want to share some of the items you brought to show today?
Oh, sure. Well, I brought some of the sourdough. If you don't have to sit there, you could come up here and look at it. But it's starting to separate again. This one I made bread the day before yesterday with this one. So just to keep it going, I'll make bread every week. And like I said, I have grandkids, so it's easy to get rid of it. And even I'm like in the bartering system, so I'll make sourdough cinnamon rolls now and again, and I'll just put it out there. Anybody want to barter? I have sourdough cinnamon. Oh yeah, it's nice and sour. Oh, and I keep paper towel over it so it'll breathe. When I feed it, sometimes it'll poof up and it'll expand, and it'll come up and then settle back down, and the paper towel will get really hard, kind of like paper mache, if you can think about that, yeah. And then when I'm doing it the night before I'm going to use my sourdough, it's super old, and the night before, I'm jumping ahead of myself, sorry.
You're good.
I get too excited and I don't talk fast, so slow my roll. The night before, I'm going to use the sourdough to make pancakes or to make bread, or you can even make cookies with sourdough, and it tastes good too. But
sourdough cookies.
Yeah, just like this extra stuff. When you're making regular chocolate chip cookies, you could throw this in there, and oh God, it tastes so good.
I didn't know that.
Oh God, you put it in anything, banana bread. Yeah, it tastes so good. But the night before, I'll take this, I'll put it in my glass bowl. I don't use metal with it. Grandpa said don't ever use metal with it, so I don't. And I'll put it in the glass bowl, the whole thing, rinse out my jar and save it for tomorrow. Then I'll take about this much flour, however much, but that much.
Grandma might call that 2 bunchings.
2 bunchings, yeah. And then I'll take warm water, and the night before, like tonight, I'll mix it all up in the bowl, cover it with like a towel, and let it sit overnight. And then tomorrow morning, I'll take my jar that I cleaned out, I'll add the sourdough to it, and if I'm going to make pancakes, then I think it's an egg, sugar, baking soda, baking powder. I'm guessing. I have to call my brother Daryl, because usually I'll make bread and then mix it like that. And then if I'm going to make bread, to me, I know that one. If I'm going to make bread, I have it all in there. I'll heat up a cup of milk, put in 3 tablespoons of butter into the milk, and then in the yeast, on the side, I'll do 1 tablespoon of sugar and 1 tablespoon of yeast, and just let it poof up for the bread. And then I'll add it to the thing and put 2 tablespoons of salt and 2 tablespoons of sugar in the milk, stir it up, add it to the mix, add a 1.5 cups of whole wheat flour and a 1.5 cups of white flour, and I'll get like two little loaves of bread that would look like this.
Good.
I mean, they could get poofier, but sometimes when they get too poofy, they're kind of hard to slice. So, and since I want my grandkids to be self-sufficient, I leave it shorter and a little bit denser so they could slice it. Yeah. So, did I jump? Did I jump out of your questions?
Yeah,
ask
please.
a question.
So I have recently gotten into sourdough. I'm so glad I found my way in here for whatever. So when you say you clean out the jar every night, so when you put it into the bowl, do you take everything out of the jar?
I rinse it with hot water.
But everything that's in the jar, so you put that in the bowl.
Yeah, I'll put the water in there and I'll stir up the water really good of whatever's left in the jar, and then put it in there.
And then in the morning you take out of the bowl.
Yeah.
And put back in the jar.
Yes. Yes. How do you do it?
So mine sits in my refrigerator.
Uh-huh.
And I did just kill mine, but then I got it back to life.
Oh,
So
good.
if you keep it in the refrigerator, apparently you don't need to feed it every day.
Yeah.
So you can kind
Oh,
of just leave it and
it's like in
forget about it,
cryo.
and then
Yeah.
if you pull it out,
Yeah.
like maybe once a week or once a month, if you're you pull it out, you bring it to room temperature, and then I feed it in the jar.
And when it starts rising, then I pull out the fed stuff and start making bread. So
Yeah.
then the jar gets really dirty.
Oh, so I just take the whole thing out. Yeah. And in the first, like the great grandma's and grandpa's crocks, they were like super crusty.
Yeah. Like
You had to,
erupt, like
chip
a
the stuff
volcano
away.
has
Yes.
erupted, yeah.
Yeah. So.
Overflowing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I never washed them. I mean, like the cast iron pan, don't wash it. So
Keep the
those I
flavor
didn't
in there.
wash. Yeah. Yeah.
So fun. Any other tips from the audience about working with sourdough?
Or questions,
Or
comments?
questions?
Yeah.
I'm using it to make baguettes at home, French baguettes.
Yes.
It's a little more challenging because I'm struggling to get it to rise properly, make a nice light baguette. So I'm trying to incubating it a little bit longer before it goes in the oven. So instead of 2 hours, which is what's normally recommended, I go over 6 or 8 hours, and that seems to help a little bit. But I think it depends on the culture.
Right.
And it may need to be refed more often.
Probably to keep it poofy. Yeah. Yeah, because. Oh. Well. Okay. Well, you could bring this one home if you wanted to bring it home. I brought extras, and it's really sour. You could smell the sour of it. Yeah. And like I said, I don't know how long I've had it. I got it from, I don't know how long my Grandpa Eddie had it. He got his when he was 12, so.
So cool.
I know. But it was when they were traveling, because when he was a boy, he traveled going along to trap lines by dog team. You went out in the spring, and then in the summer, or in the winter, you went out to go trapping and stuff and live on the land in that way to get all your furs to make money. And then in the summertime, somebody would come out and pick you up by boat. So they had to make sure they had all of their supplies. In his sled, he would have, flour, tea, sugar. And then the expectation was for everything else, you would trap, hunt, and fish, because the places where he went trapping was down on the Innoko River, and that was quite a distance away because like he was up in this area, and he went all the way through Caillou to the other side of the Caillou Mountains down to this area to trap, and he'd been doing it for years. With his family, they always did it, and he said he remembered when it would be so cold, he would have to take the sourdough starter and keep it under in your armpit area.
Yeah.
So you hear a lot of stories about how the trappers were, even the native people were very resourceful in how they kept their starters going. Yeah. And I see people dry it out, and you can mail it or share it. That's another way. And I'm not brave enough to do that. Maybe I could try it with one. I have all these little experiment jars going too right now, so I could try it. Yeah.
Like space sourdough.
Yeah, dehydrated and then see if it'll reconstitute. But I wonder if, it's just good to experiment and see what it'll find out. And that's how I start stuff. I'm like, I wonder what'll happen if, and then I try. Yeah.
If it freezes, can you bring it back to life?
I don't know. Because everything froze. When you left your trapping cabin, or because it was basically like a wall tent, or before they had just hides, it had to have froze. But then the other thing too is like when they had, like when they started getting canned stuff like canned milk, like because the doctors recommended, outside doctors who were new to the area recommended that they give their the mothers give their babies canned milk if they couldn't nurse. They would dig a hole in the water, and down at the bottom the water is still running. So they would put the canned milk down under in the water, the flowing water. So I wonder if they did that with other things too, because it didn't freeze when they took it back out. It was not frozen. But it was also, excellent refrigeration too. So that's a good I wonder. I have only my Aunt Luana, the eldest elder that I know that I could ask. And she's actually in town too right now, so I will ask her.
There you go.
Yeah.
I was wondering with your baguettes, do you
Also add some yeast, or do you just use the
It's just a
natural?
starter. The starter, I got the starter from a friend. I'm not sure how he makes it, how he starts it off. But it's, it is definitely a sourdough starter. You can smell the unique smell of sourdough. But that's all. I just use the starter, and then I don't use bread anything. I use general purpose flour and a little extra salt, and then water.
Yeah, it was so fun. One of the fascinating things about this type of food is the environment will really affect the taste, the humidity, the temperature. I had some sourdough waffles down in Cake at my dear friend Lagunai, Liz Medicine Crow's house. Her dad, her late father, Pa Chini, cooked for us, and it was different it was super delicious. And we also used jam, local jam, on there, and it was a variation of what I had eaten growing up. So I think one of the fascinating things is just like how it varies. One of my questions is, how might Alaskan sourdough be different than other sourdoughs? Do you have any ideas?
I have no ideas, but that's a good question, because sourdough has been around since in BC times, before Christ, because you think about the Egyptians, the first sourdough was discovered like in their area, and they did reconstitute it. So it can be dried out for a long time.
From the pyramids?
Yes, from before the pyramids, because what they call it, the Fertile Crescent Valley, thinking back to our world history. And in those times, they were growing and doing different things. And how did it come all the way out here? Basically, with each wave of people that came to the United States from those areas, it traveled around from the Fertile Crescent Valley into other areas through trade routes. So just think it probably all started at one place at one time, and then it got the variations from each new land, each new people. It's kind of like salmon, how, we, in Alaska, all Alaska Native groups consume salmon. We prepare it different, we eat it different, but it's still salmon. So.
Yeah, lots of variation.
Yeah. So I'll bet, because even the things you put in it, the things you eat with it.
Have you seen many differences in the way that people use this today than when you grew up?
Well, I know during the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, it like blew up. There were, I kind of followed some sourdough groups just like to observe what were people doing.
That's right, during lockdown. Huh?
Yeah, when you were locked down. And even one of my beading groups, it was like Indigenous people from Canada, the United States, and Mexico, South America. we were talking about sourdough pancakes, and some of the people were like, oh, and I kept hearing, well, oh, that's how we eat it too. Oh, that's how we make it too, you know? So I think for just the pancake thing, that seems to be like, for Indigenous people, that was the thing, because we didn't have ovens. I mean, originally when we got ovens to start making breads, it was, ovens were made out of, gas used to come in these square tin cans, and the native people were very resourceful that they cut the cans, and they saw how other people had, the newcomers had ovens, so they took these gas cans, they burnt them out, they washed them, and they made their own little ovens, and they would put it like over a fire, and they like trial and error, learning how to use an oven in that way. So it's kind of cool that in Kaikuk, Edith Hildebrand's mom she told me about Eleanor Kriska. She had, at her camp, she had made her own oven, and that she used to bake bread all day. It took a whole day using that oven, because you had to keep the fire under it just right, and I mean,
to not burn it.
Yeah, to not burn it, and to watch it, and to move it around, because, you know, cooking on a campfire, that's kind of hard enough as it is, because you really have to watch where the coals get low and the flames will flame up. So just the ingenuity of Indigenous people to learn how to bake bread. Yeah, and it was the same thing with like as far as food preservation go for you know, like how a lot of people put their fish or meat up in jars, pressure cooked jars. Even before getting pressure cookers, the people knew this. They witnessed what the newcomers were doing, how they were putting their food up and watching. So then they got like those 55-gallon gas drums. They used to float on the coast or float down the Yukon River from wherever traders would just push it in the water. And the people took those things and they turned the 55-gallon drums, they cut it in half, and it would be kind of like a tub. So they would trade for the jars, and then they would get these drums and put it on campfires and start boiling the water, put their fish and even ducks and moose meat, caribou, in the jars and pressure cook their food in that way. So it was another thing that came from observing the newcomers to the state, that Indigenous people learned about food preservation. And there had to have been a lot of trial and error, because I was thinking about, you know, like botulism, because even the way we eat our food for like healthy gut, we eat a lot of aged food, you know, like aged meat, aged fish, but you know, we know from hundreds of years of doing it, we know how to do it just right. So we have these delicacies, and it's the aged foods that they're just so good. And I never heard of people dying from botulism or anything like that, because even we used to take salmon eggs raw and put it in a wooden barrel, and it would get really rotted, and then put fish heads in there. And after a few days, pull the fish heads out. It stinks to high heaven. But
rinse it off?
Yeah, rinse it off and then eat it. And oh my God, it tastes so good.
Almost like kind of sweet?
Sweet, yes. Have you tried it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so good.
My Yupik friend made it here in Fairbanks and tried it out. I was surprised at the taste.
Yeah.
Because I had heard stories of my mom and our elders eating it pretty regularly.
Yeah.
But we had never made it at home. So
yeah,
that's fascinating.
And it was good for our diet. And then, of course, you know, once the traders came in, they brought sugar and flour. And then now today, people are making Indian tacos, and I'm doing air quotes because I'm not quite sure. It's basically fry bread with beans and meat and cheese on top of it, and lettuce and tomatoes and stuff. And it's a huge fundraiser for a lot of different Native events nowadays. But it's so high in fat, high in sugar, and even like the processed foods that are in there. It's just, it contributes to our own downfall, you know, with these modern ways of fixing food. So it's probably our diet was better for us before, because even as a child in the 1960s, I don't remember anybody, not a single soul that was overweight. But then again, too, they were not watching television. We had no television. We're all out running and playing and working and
On the go.
on the go, eating dried fish, moose meat, beaver, all kinds of fish. So greens in the summer, berries. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me think if there's something in this type of food with the fermentation or the way it reacts with your biome, if it kind of helps with overall health or longevity, because I know even common illnesses like the cold or that crud in the wintertime was a lot less common than it is today. And it could be, like you're saying, the lifestyle and the movement, but
Right.
I am curious to know if there's something in here, like again, like with the baking soda or some ingredient that somehow helps you fight off, you know, the common cold or things that we might encounter during this time of year especially.
Ooh, a hard science question, do I wonder?
Yeah.
That would be a good science fair project for some kid.
Get our students going
Uh-huh.
on one of these things.
Yeah.
So even though these are, you know, you might describe them as non-native foods, today we've adapted, like people all around the world, to have these as favorite foods at family gatherings and things like that. Are there other types of imported foods or non-native foods that you can think of, like similar to this dish?
Well, we were talking about bannik before. A lot of people up the river from where we live make bannik. It's like a fried bread as well. And where I come from, bannik was not a thing. And not even fry bread. It was not like a big thing for our people, but in different places, that was a thing you had. Their grandpa used to talk about he loved getting hardtack from the store when he was a little boy. That was one of his favorite things. And it was like, what the heck is hardtack? And then when we're helping him get ready for going out on the trap line, or when we're getting ready to go out camping, because it was a whole family affair, we had, once you're a certain age, then you help gather the food and pack it up and whatnot. And those round pilot bread Sailor Boy crackers, he said, don't forget the hardtack, Catty. And I'm digging around in the cupboards. I'm like looking for the hardtack.
What is he talking about?
What the heck? I can't find no hardtack. And you know, I'm like, I don't know where the hardtack is, Grandpa. Is it in the warehouse? Because he had another house where we kept dried food. And he said, it's right there in front of you. And on the countertop, there was that blue box of pilot bread crackers. And he still called it hardtack. And I got a kick out of it because it's like, I didn't know that was hardtack. And so we're looking at it, and then of course, you know, I tell all my brothers and sisters, oh, this is hardtack. I'm so smart. I know this is hardtack now, only after my grandpa yelled at me about it. But pilot bread crackers, it's like one of the staples from trading days, that hard cracker. And even when I was working, I grew up and became a teacher, and I'm retired from that now. But when I was working in the public school system here in Fairbanks, when the kids didn't have hot lunch money, or when they forgot their hot lunch, they used to give them a hardtack pilot bread cracker with peanut butter on it.
Oh yeah.
That was like the thing. And I always, you know, the native kids were like, oh, yum. You know, it's like, oh, we're getting pilot bread. And even at Halloween, you know, when you're running around knocking on people's doors, sometimes you'll get in your little bag of treats, you'll get a pilot bread cracker, a hardtack cracker. You go home, it's like, oh, yum.
Stay good for a long time.
Yes, and it does. It stays good for a long time. And I had to chuckle because during the pandemic, we're such good hoarders, my age group, I think. I got a case of it from Costco. I know.
Oh, you went out and panic bought pilot bread.
I panic bought pilot bread. I didn't get toilet paper. I will confess, toilet paper was not high on my list. But I remember 9/11, the planes quit flying, and Oh, the stores ran out of stuff.
Oh.
That was like in my recent memory was 9/11 when stores ran out of stuff, and I remember it just like tobacco products were the first to go. But I remember in Nulato, the first thing they ran out of was pilot bread crackers. So I was like, well, I'm not going to run out of pilot bread crackers. I'll make sure I have some, and I could send some home to the village if they need it.
Just fill up your cart at Costco.
Actually, I'm putting cases in, and I'm shopping with my sister-in-law. She looks at me and says, Kat, you're home by yourself. That's an awful lot of crackers. I know, but if we run out, I'll have it.
Try barter, yeah.
Yeah, I could barter pilot bread crackers away. I still have one case left too.
Pretty good.
I know, but it's too funny, and it stays pretty good for a long time. And if it gets that kind of funky soft thing, just put it in the oven for a while, 5 minutes, take it out, it's hard again. So, yeah.
I just attended a meeting in Hawaii with some Native Hawaiian folks, and the organizer had asked us to bring some local snacks. So I brought a couple jars of smoked, cooked fish, like the half pints, and a box of pilot bread, and just put those in bags and gave them out. It's like, we don't have like those Japanese rice cracker things, but we have these crackers, and it's good in a pinch. If you, like you said, during the day, if you forget you need a snack or on the go, you could just...
Yeah, put a cracker in
convenient.
Oh, yep. And they're great for teething, for our babies. I mean, I think myself and my brothers and sisters probably gnawed on them. When we ran out of dried fish or dried meat, moose jerky, which was rare, really. But now it's different. Now it's like my grandkids are not even able to eat dried smoked fish because we can't fish on the Yukon River.
Geez, yeah,
I know.
I think this summer maybe even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can be civilly disobedient. That's what I'm thinking. I mean, seriously, I was thinking about it. It's, like we have an abundance of Western food, yes, but the foods that we grew up in, it's so important culturally to who we are. We have this contract with our indigenous foods because it's a contract with the land, a contract with the water. And it's where all of my life lessons were from fish camp. The way I became a kid to a young woman, the change of my life to switch to that was at fish camp, and how you learn your role, the family values. You learn how to work really hard because, you are not finished until your fish is out of the river, in your smokehouse, put away dry to eat in the cache or in your freezer. That's when it's over. And it's a huge time where you learn so many roles. And of course, we're doing sourdough bread breakfast every day, but also we're eating a whole variety of fish. And for myself and my brothers and sisters and my own children, we grew up teething and chewing dried fish. And I'm looking at my grandson, he's 1.5 years. He has never had dried smoked fish from home. Wow. And that's a cultural loss.
That's our soul food.
It is. That's what makes us who we are. And I was thinking about it. It's like, well, maybe I do need to be civilly disobedient, because as a tribal woman and how I pass on traditional knowledge, it's intergenerational at fish camp, or where you cut fish together. You're there with your grandparents, with your parents, yourself and your children and your grandchildren. And it is a tribal issue. It is a tribal learning environment and grounding. So
yeah,
I might need bail money.
Yeah, our family adapted by going down to the Kenai Peninsula and getting redfish, and it has a different fat content than our Yukon River salmon. It looks and smells and tastes a little bit different, but it's applying those skills that Grandma taught us. And actually, my dad is the one who taught us to cut fish, because he learned from Grandma, because my mom was involved in other areas of running, supporting fish camp. So it's so funny that my native grandma taught my non-native dad how to cut fish and prepare the brine and the strips and everything, and then He taught us kids, and I try to pay attention so that I could pass it on and all the steps that it takes. But it's things do change, and we do adapt over time. Even during my lifetime, I've noticed at our potlatches, there's a lot more store-bought processed foods being set out, and maybe more like spaghetti dishes, and not as much varieties of meats like we would have had beaver or duck or bear sometimes. And I'm not sure what you could attribute that to, a change in lifestyle, people moving to town, a whole variety of factors. But at the same time, we're continuing the potlatch tradition and still honoring our loved ones and cooking for each other, things like that. So I am also hopeful that your grandchildren, my daughter, and future generations could carry these skills and adapt, and not only go for chips and pop and processed foods.
No.
I never let my daughter have pop. I'll give her Doritos sometimes, but it makes you think about our lifestyle and trying to balance that active lifestyle where we also have a sedentary lifestyle where we have 9-to-5 jobs and schooling for most of the year and all these things that limit our ability to go out and spend time on the land. Lots to think about.
There is a lot to think about.
Food is such a fascinating foray into culture, right?
It is. Well, and I was just thinking about what you've said, and I could, it's hard. Adapting is hard, but it could be done for us. But for our family who don't have the means that we have living in rural Alaska, they can't adapt. They're isolated. Mm-hmm. That's all they have and all they know. Mm-hmm. And it's only the 2% users of all the salmon in the state of Alaska, and they're the first ones to get cut off.
Are you referring to subsistence?
Yeah,
fisher?
Subsistence fishers in the villages, yeah. So my heart hurts for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully our Native people can organize, and our policies can shift, and we can once again have more local control of our hunting and fishing practices. Because we know how to take care of the lands and waters, and we've done it for so long without abusing that relationship. And I think there's a lot that we can learn.
Truly.
And teach others.
Yeah.
Was there anything else you wanted to share?
Do you have any questions? I know we just jumped all over from sourdough all the way over to these other ways of gathering food and whatnot. But no, I'm just grateful for the opportunity to be here. I appreciate Dinakanaga, Tana Chiefs Doyon for providing this opportunity. Not just for me, but for other people to come and share things and to hear how things are shared across our country, how different people do things that we do. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of cool.
I have a question.
Please.
I've seen in here this fish camp and how it was a huge part of growing up for people. How long did fish camp last? Was it like just a week? Or
No.
All summer?
It was the whole summer. You went out when school got out, like in May. Usually you went out when school got out, if school was going on. In my case, there was a mission school in my village. So we went out when school got out, and we stayed out there all summer until all the fish was dried. Then we came back, because even the whole household left, the grandmas, the grandpas, great-grandmas, great-grandpas, all the dogs, because we used to have dogs for, getting wood and everything else. So we stayed out there all summer long, because you had to, as a child, when I was a child, we had to get fish for ourselves to feed us throughout the winter, and then we had to get fish to feed the dogs also throughout the winter. So it was a long event. And then our fish camps were in places where there were different types of berries or different types of greens that you could go walk to those areas and gather other foods too. So, and even like birch bark was a huge part too. People going out to gather birch bark to make baskets, to put your dried food in, to put it away. So all of those different lessons happened. And then now it's that those were how those fish camps were when I was a little girl. And now people have, you know, with income, having income coming in from different ways, or the pipeline going through. A lot of men ended up going to work on the pipeline where they were doing it used to be like 6 weeks on and 6 weeks off. So they would go away to work for their time and then come home, and they would have money to where they could buy boats with higher power motors on it, to where going out to camp is, you know, it's not as long as it used to be. It could be for a weekend, it could be for a week, or if you choose to stay out at camp until all your fish is finished drying, you could do that too. It's kind of up to the family and how they want to do it. And even where our camp used to be 18 miles down the river from Nulato, and then coming back upriver was the hard part. It would take longer. Now with boats, you can go down and back, you know, go down in the morning and be back in the village at night. So, and you know, because now there's showers, it's like, oh, I need to take a hot shower. It was when you were in the camp, you didn't take a hot shower, you jump in the water or jump in the creek nearby, and that's how you cleaned up. Now every night you go home.
Just put on a bandana.
Yeah, just put on a bandana. And in fact, yeah, I used to just walk around with nothing on my hair and walk in the smokehouse, and fish will drip on my hair. And I used to tease my sister, yeah, we're gonna be bear bait, because the bears used to come down the hill to clean the racks off of their food. Yeah.
So do people still have
Have fish camps to this day? Do your
Definitely.
families-
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I would say there's probably not as many.
No, there used to be like in the 80s, I did a boat trip from the Yukon Bridge all the way down to Caltag to, it was like a research project gathering information on medicinal plants. How were they used? How did you gather from one camp to the next camp? And on this journey, it was kind of like a snowball. Whatever information I gained at the next camp, I had to share. Whatever I gained there, I had to share. And it was a way for me to internalize and memorize all of these places, and then draw pictures and take samples. So there was like every 4 miles, every 5 miles, there would be a camp. There was a camp. There was a camp. And it was one of the most beautiful experiences of my life to have that. It was phenomenal. But yeah, now it's not as much as it used to be. Probably you'll see one camp in 20 miles. Sometimes somebody will be there. Other times nobody will be there, because they just, like I said, you can zip down and zip back.
Yeah, at our family's fish camp at Big Eddy, upriver from our village at Ruby, we would go there. I remember in the 90s was probably, well, I don't know if it was the heyday of king salmon fishing, but I remember Grandma pulling up these huge kings, you know, probably bigger than me, like the size of like a seal, like a baby seal, so huge. And I was just running around and just being fascinated by her working on the salmon. And I remember everyone would come and stop, and there would be tea going. There's like the cutting rack and then like a sitting area, so people could, you know, we could receive visitors. And it was very common for people to pull up and visit and say hi, have some tea, and then go on their way. And visiting more recently, people would just tend to drive past.
They don't stop anymore, yeah.
And then even you'd probably only see a couple boats. It's not like zoom, zoom, zoom as I remember back in like that during that time when I was younger. Yeah, could be the price of fuel, could be a lot of different things. Yeah, our economy has shifted.
Well, even when I retired from teaching, I was working at the university and teaching classes there. And at the university, I had students who were college students, and some of them had never been home for a summer since they were in middle school, because the goal was for them to leave the village, get a college education. And to do that, they were involved in numerous camps and internships, sports camps, leadership camps, culture camps, where they left their village to learn in the summertime, leaving their cultural activities, doing all of these other things. And it was kind of, I'm sharing all of this Alaska Native history in the classes. And then when COVID hit and we switched to doing Zoom and audio conference classes, some of the kids, their comments were like, oh my God, I had no idea what I was missing all of these years. I think the last time I went away to do fish camp I was 8 years old, and now I'm doing it. And one young man was like on St. Lawrence Island, and he was so happy he had gotten his first seal, and he was a man. And he said, I know kids do this when they're younger, like at 9, they could get their first seal. And he said, now finally, culturally, I understand what it means to be a man. Because, like when you can provide food and feed others, then for males in different indigenous cultures here, it's a transition to being a man. You are now a man because you can provide food for other people. Mm-hmm. So for him he felt that disconnect, but he didn't get it until he called into the class and he's like, I'm now a man. Like at 18, he could vote, yeah, I'm a man, yeah, I'm a man. But when he was talking about his seal, he was like, I'm a man. And I was like, wow.
Mm-hmm. In the context of where he's from.
Yes. I mean, just to see and to hear these experiences it was rewarding. And I since had left the university, so I wonder, what are they doing today? It hasn't been that long, And right there, that in itself is a good study. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think. Yeah. Good information for us to have. Mm-hmm. Because in Alaska Native history, indigenous history, with each wave of outside contact, there were pandemics. So our people knew about pandemics. There would be these great die-offs or massive die-offs of people, even the people who were not on the coast, when the Russians first came, how just from the natural trading and gathering of food, so many people would die off inland that the Westerners didn't see it. But with this latest pandemic, we knew, we witnessed, we finally understood what our ancestors had talked about, because some people talk about it, they call it the Great Death. Other people don't talk about it. The time of only children, because like whole villages were wiped out of the past, and sometimes only children survive by, I don't know, but how the tribes were missing from one place, so then they would move to another place and then regroup and start. Now with this whole, what is it, that genealogy thing everybody's doing, the blood thing?
23andMe?
Yeah, 23andMe, all these different things. People are doing it, indigenous people are doing it, and they're finding out they're related all across the state. It's like, well, think about the times of pandemic and how things started. It's kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. I know I went off on a tangent. I'm really good at bird walking. You have to keep me focused.
Your experience and knowledge is so expansive. It makes sense to draw these connections in different areas beyond sourdough. It's interconnected to our ways of life and adapting over time, and who we are as a people. Lots to think about.
Truly.
You just triggered all these stories and thoughts and emotions in that last little segment. So we're winding down to our last few minutes here. Are there any other questions or comments from our audience here today? Well, we want to thank you again for joining us. This has been such a wonderful dialogue and sharing. You have so much to bring for others to learn, so I really appreciate you coming here. Namaste, and hope to hear from you another time. So just a reminder for everyone online, thank you also for joining us be sure to follow Morris Thompson on social media and keep a lookout for our future events. And that's all we have for you today. Isi Qada.